Iran has a new supreme leader. Just days after the US president said he wanted to have a hand in choosing Ali Khamenei's successor, Iran has shunned reformists and opted for the continuation of hardline rule. What message does it send the US and Israel? As the war enters a second week, we'll debate the latest here on Counterpoints with me, Melinda Nucifora. Sons often feel pressured to live up to the reputation of their fathers. Ali Khamenei's son has the extra weight of war on his shoulders. 56-year-old Mojtaba Khamenei has been appointed Iran's new supreme leader. Not only does it mean the Khamenei name carries on, it also flags a continuation of Iran's hardline governance.
Iranians may have disagreements among themselves, but they are Iranians. They stand for Iran and will not cooperate with you in breaking Iran apart. Besides, our people have seen what happens when the US intervenes in the region. You intervened in Iraq. What happened to the people of Iraq? You are not concerned about the people of Iran.
Ali Khamenei was in power for almost 4 decades. Can his son cement control amid one of Iran's most vulnerable periods in modern history? Equally vulnerable right now are oil markets, with prices on the rise. President Trump says short-term pain is a fair price to pay for long-term peace. Is he right? Coming up, we'll ask our panel, what message does the appointment of Khamenei's son send to the US and Israel? Was it a strategic mistake to launch attacks on Iran's fuel depots? And how divided is Iranian society as the war enters a second week? Joining this discussion is Arezo Rashidian, a healthcare professional and long-time political activist for a free, secular Iran. Kieran Andrieu is back with us, political commentator and doctor of political economy. And rounding out this panel, Meugniot, strategic political advisor. To all of you, thank you and welcome to being here on Counterpoints. President Donald Trump made it clear that he thought the US should have a say in who would become Iran's next supreme leader. But, not surprisingly, Iran's Assembly of Experts vehemently disagreed with that. Not only did it not seek President Trump's advice, but it appointed the son of the leader the US assassinated. So, as the war enters its second week, Iran is doing everything it can to show defiance and perhaps more importantly, continuity within Iran's hardline forces. Arezo, let's start with you. Does the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei indicate that the US and Israeli strikes have had little to no impact on the direction of Iran's leadership?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Absolutely not. We know that this was going to happen. It's actually, as an activist in 2009, Mojtaba is a hardliner, and we expected something like this to happen. The attacks haven't knocked out the regime completely. This is a deep-rooted regime, 47 years. So we knew that someone would be appointed. This is survival of the fittest. The regime will do what it needs to do to contain, as much as it can, legitimacy. So none of the Iranians are surprised. We knew that this would happen, and it's not something that is, validating the regime for us. It's how long they're going to stay in power.
Mm-hmm. Kieran, what do you think? Is this a sign that the US and Israel have been ineffective in forcing the leadership's hand, or is Arezo correct in the assertion that this was always going to be the case?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the Israelis aspire to have a new leader, like, for example, the son of the late Shah or an individual with a political coalition underneath them that is able to step up and fill the void of a 47-year-old state formation as exists in Iran now. I don't think that's what the Israelis are after. I think what they're after is chaos. I think they're after anarchy, actually. I think they're after a failed state and the kind of Iraqification of Iran. That suits their geostrategy and geopolitical ambitions in the region very, very well, which is to say, to become the regional hegemon without any counterbalancing or counterweight force in the region. And that's been stated. I mean, plenty of examples of Israeli statespeople, people in charge of Israeli statescraft, repeating that often. So that's the first thing. I don't think there's any intent in doing that. Second thing is I see absolutely zero evidence, and perhaps our guest can present me with some, but I see zero evidence that there is an alternative waiting in the wings to the current regime. And, you know, again, whenever I say this, I try and strike a nuanced position on this, but often that nuance gets lost in the heat of the debate. I am not in favor of the regime. I'm also not in favor of failed states and countries being bombed and civilians being killed and toxic fumes being released to run amok in a city. Those fumes cannot discern whose lungs belong to regime and supporters of the regime and whose lungs belong to the good and innocent people of Iran. They don't make a distinction, right? So, and I'm not in favor of girls' schools being bombed, by the way, using AI. I'm not in favor of any of those things, no. So, and I do have to say, look, you're Iranian, our other guest is Iranian, I don't want to impugn you, but I do find it extremely difficult to get my head around the idea of somebody in a safe place urging the bombing of their country when things like girls' schools are being hit. That to me is quite astonishing. I struggle to get my head around it. Maybe we can elaborate more on that in a while. But no, I see zero evidence of these green shoots of alternative power bases rising up to fill the vacuum that will inevitably be left by the decapitation of a 47-year-old regime. If someone could present me with solid, reliable evidence, not Saudi-backed evidence or, you know, US-backed evidence or Israeli-backed evidence, if someone can present me with genuine evidence that is a credible route forward, that there is a credible route to that, I'd be very happy to review that evidence.
Okay, Joey, I'll bring you in just a moment, but Arezo, respond to those comments from Kieran. I mean, who is waiting in the wings? Can
There is someone. It's the transitional leader, Prince Reza Pahlavi. He has for decades has said, if you were to go back to his words, he has said exactly what it is. He wants a democratic, free, secular Iran. He is someone who will lead a transition, a coalition, and have, you know, a democratic transition for that. He is the leader. This revolution is different. From January, from the first, when the protesters came out, it is completely different this time. They are calling out for his name in the streets of Tehran, all over Iran. This is the difference that we've been waiting for as an activist for so long. It was for someone's name to be called out, which is Prince Reza Pahlavi. And for 47 years, they have been rooted. But I do think that the US and Israel and the rest of the world are aware that there needs to be a change. And the people of Iran begged for change. They wrote it on the walls. They came out in the streets. I mean, we can't compare a cloud of black smoke to what the regime did within the past 2 months. I mean, you're talking
Were they begging to be bombed?
Killings.
I mean, were they begging to be bombed? Were they begging for elementary schools?
But we're talking targeted attacks. That's what every single Iranian wants. Targeted
Fantastic
attacks.
pinpoint targeting that. Yeah.
They are targeted attacks, and that is what has happened, and that's what is going to occur. They are not going out there to bomb. I totally disagree. That is
that in your heart of hearts. And just
the
to say
Iranian people.
on the late Shah's son, this is a guy who declared himself leader of the Iranian people and the Iranian state in 1980.
That's not true.
The year his father died when he was 19 years old. And he's been living in Connecticut ever since, the Fresh Prince of Connecticut. You know, I struggle very, very strongly to believe that if you drop this guy in Tehran right now, forget the regime, say the regime wasn't there. If you drop this guy in the middle of Tehran right now, he wouldn't be I think he would be.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna pause it for a second. I'm going to bring Joey in, and then Arzu, I'm going to come back to you. Joey, is the Shah's son a viable alternative? Does the US and Israel want chaos in the region, like what Kieran is asserting, or is a firm and stable Iran better? And can they have that with the current leadership?
So I'll answer those kind of backwards. One is that no, they can't have a stable the region will not be stable with the current regime. Although I do find it really funny and kind of interesting that the Supreme Council is now, I guess, in favor of hereditary succession. And so we've kind of gone backwards into monarchy. So we are kind of arguing for two different flavors of monarchy at the moment. So I think that aside, no, the United States doesn't want chaos, and I don't think the Israelis do either. I think that the global energy supply is predicated upon a stable Iran. I think the regional partners, I think Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Lebanon, Jordan, I think the rest of the Middle East would very much like to see a stable Iran that wasn't a threat to them. And as far as, pinpoint strikes and everything else, it's really easy to sit there and say that when if you're at a Marriott or something in Dubai right now getting hit with suicide drones, right? Like we had friends of ours that were stuck in Dubai and their hotel got struck by a suicide drone, right? They're not a military target. But that's what the Iranian regime decided to strike back at Western partners and allies of the United States. I think there's plenty of things to go around to say that, but no, I don't think the United States or Israel for that matter, but primarily the United States. I'm less of a fan.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Kieran. Let's let Joey finish up, because Joey, I want to ask you: is Reza a viable alternative here? Do you agree with what Arzu says on that?
Yeah, I think he can be a viable candidate, a viable transitional leader. I think there's no reason why he can't be. But ultimately, I think that any path forward would require consent of the Iranian people, and I think that's kind of where the democratic republic side of things would come in and allow the Iranian people, instead of commentators on here or anywhere else, decide. I think the Iranian people ought to get a say in who that is, and if there's a transitional plan in place in which they can go out and have free and fair actual elections. And choose kind of their own destiny, then I think that's what the United States would wholeheartedly support, as several people in the administration have said already.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just wanted to touch real fast on Mojtaba Khamenei. I just want everyone to know what kind of individual this person is and bring this back. He is a hardliner. In 2009, when the Green Movement happened, I was an activist and I worked on a project on Samsung and Nokia that was providing spyware technology to track protesters. And that actually went forward in the European Parliament. And we brought, a huge voice to that. He is in charge of the secret police. He is the fundamental leader of that movement of secret police, of the Basij. He has a strong, connections and ties to the IRGC. He is extremely dangerous. And having him be the chosen, as the supreme leader without even any consent with the Iranian people or anything, this is a show to show. This is why there is talk of ground troops. I just want everyone to understand what happens inside of Iran. He will start mobilizing the cities, and they will start tracking people that do come out, because we're hearing it from Prince Reza Pahlavi, and we're hearing it from President Trump and from Israel, that is ultimately up to the people of Iran. With him being the person that is chosen now, it is extremely dangerous for people of Iran to come outside, because he will track them. We're talking 220 hours of no internet. When my family tries to get a hold, it's just quick. Hey, we're fine. That's all we can get. I mean, you're talking, this is a blackout during a targeted strikes inside of Iran. I mean, this is what the regime does. I want us to focus on what the regime is capable of, and what Mojtaba is who he is. I think that is so crucial to know what kind of dictator, authoritarian, regime we're dealing with.
Whether or not that's true, though, Arzu, is that he is the leader, and why should the US have a say in who should be the leader of Iran?
I just want to jump in off
Right.
the back of that, please.
Okay, all right. Let me just get an answer from Arezo on that, and then we'll come to you.
Yeah, I think that this regime needs to go. It's complete regime.
But why does
change.
President Trump get to say who he thinks should be?
He actually hasn't said who gets to be. He said it is up to the people of Iran. He keeps repeating that. It is up to the people of Iran. But when you're oppressed and you have an authoritarian government that is in place, how can we expect people to go out? They killed over 35,000 people within 2 months. It is so hard to see my family members want to go outside inside of the streets of Tehran when they know that they're going to be killed. I just want to give you a picture real fast of what happens when they protest. Standing next to me could be one of you, any of you, plain clothes right next to me. And then in 2 seconds, I will turn my head and someone like you has snatched my friend up. That is what that regime does. And I just want people to understand what kind of, they are so barbaric that we can't even grasp it. I mean, you have internet cut off, 35,000 dead within 2 months. What more can they beg for when they're writing on walls and graffiti, President Trump, help us?
Okay,
They're
all right.
begging for it,
Kieran,
and they don't even care. Give up the oil.
Doesn't it show, though, Kieran, that there is a point there? I mean, if people don't have the ability to rise up, how can you criticize them for not taking back power?
I'm not criticizing them for not taking back power. I'm saying that I do not believe for a moment that the right course of action in that scenario is for a wanted war criminal and a lunatic who's trying to distract from ties to a paedophile bombing a country is the way out of it.
Keir Starmer, or are we talking about Mendelsohn or Prince Andrew?
I'm going to finish my point because there's so much intellectual clutter in what both of you said. I think we need to untie it unpick it bit by bit. Number one, you're either lying or you're not apprised of the information, because Donald Trump did specifically say he wants a hand in who the next leader is. So what you said is not true. Number two, Saddam was a terrible guy. We all know that Saddam Hussein was an awful guy who tried to run a genocide against the Kurds in Halabja in the early 1990s. We know that. And it didn't change the fact that the outcome in Iraq was an unmitigated shit show. It was a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of total and utter Pandora's box, the most horrifying political outcomes you could possibly imagine, including ISIS. Okay? So the fact that it was an awful regime didn't change the fact that decapitating it with no viable alternative after the regime had spent a long time, the Ba'athist regime had spent a long time bedding itself in, didn't change the fact that it turned into a failed state, and that out of those failed states, all sorts of horrors of a higher magnitude emerged. Okay, that's the next thing. The other thing is,
the difference is they fund terrorism.
If you keep going on about how awful the regime is, and I don't disagree with you necessarily. I think there are some things to question in what you're saying. Like, I don't think the 35,000 number has been verified, and I think we should ask for verification of those numbers. I don't think
Amnesty International said over 10,000.
Okay, all right, wrap it up for us, Kieran, because I need to hand it over to Joey.
It de facto mean that we support it. If we question the number, ask for evidence. I think that's what any sane, rational person should do. But I don't disagree with you that the regime mistreats its people very badly. But again, why is Benjamin Netanyahu the right person to lead this cavalry? In that case, if you're talking about people who treat people terribly, the guy is a wanted war criminal. So on all sorts of levels, it's completely insane. And the problem that you guys have, the final point I want to make is, the problem that both of you have is you say America doesn't want chaos, Israel doesn't want chaos. Fair enough. I can't prove that that's what they want. I can't prove their motives. What I can say is that that's what we're getting right now. International energy markets spiking, the highest levels since the inflation of 2022, which was the highest inflation in energy markets for a very long time.
I am going to come to oil markets in just a moment. We're going to come to oil markets. So I just want to quickly hand over to Joey before we get into the, I was going to say drill down, but that seems like a bad pun. Joey, just weigh in on that. I want to know your point of view on that. And also, is this a sign that perhaps the system in place is more resilient, more immune to external effects than the US and Israel want to acknowledge?
As far as the regime goes, I think they're resistant. Obviously, they're fighting back and they're hanging on to power. I think that's part of it. As far as what President Trump wants to, I think what he wants, right? I have not been in the room and I'm not him, but I can look at Venezuela as a pretty good model of why he wants some say in what happens. Right? You look at Venezuela and you say, well, Maduro's not there and everything was going to be awful. It was going to be chaos. That's what you're telling us now, except for it's not. The vice president took over and the country is relatively stable. And we are. Yeah, but you point to Iraq like it's the exact same thing, and it's not.
They're not bombing Venezuela.
Kieran, just let Joey finish so that we can move on to our next segment.
Bombing Venezuela?
It simply isn't the same thing. You're trying to compare two things that aren't the same thing. The Ba'ath regime is not the same as the regime in Tehran. 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan is not the same thing that we're talking about here. So if you want to compare apples to apples, then be fairly critical of all the other things that are going on. And so I think we can look to recent history, not something that happened 20 years ago. If you want a good example of what I think the Trump administration's policy is or what they're going to do moving forward would be more of that, which is why he wants some input and who a transitional leader is, someone he can work with. He wants to find someone that the regional partners, that Saudi Arabia, that the Emiratis, that the Israelis, that the Jordanians, that they can think that they can work with as well. And I think that's a smart and sane choice, not just taking an American puppet and throwing him in there and hoping for the best, or an Israeli puppet for that matter, or anybody's puppet.
Who is that going to be?
I think that there's some thought going to, because we don't. I don't know. I think that the
exactly.
Prince is a viable candidate. But no one knows. You don't have an answer to that either. And your idea is the status quo. And I think that's laughable. The status quo is gone. There is no status quo. The regime has got to go. And I think the world's better off for it.
Later.
Okay, we're going to move.
Infrastructure, destroy the government, and then Venezuela is a terrible analogy. I mean, a really terrible analogy.
Because so is Iraq, and so is the Ba'ath regime.
So is Iraq. Why is Iraq a terrible analogy? Tell me. Why is Iraq a terrible analogy? Go on.
Because we haven't been there for 20 years. President Trump wasn't the president then either. I don't know. You're talking about completely different political leadership. The entire U.S. government has changed since then. We have different cabinet ministers. We have different leaders in the military. There's a whole different generation of people. It's a completely different analogy. Like, it's not the same thing. Like,
why? You haven't explained why.
I know you really want it to be because it serves the narrative purpose better, but that just simply isn't true. If you want a better example, it would be Venezuela.
You're totally wrong. Sir, you're completely and utterly wrong.
That's fine. You're fair to think that.
I would love everyone. And I just want you guys to know that the Prince Principality does have.
Okay.
He has a booklet.
Kieran, just wait a moment. Let's let Arzu have a say, and then I'm moving us on. Arzu?
Thanks. Yeah, I just want everyone to note that Prince Reza Pahlavi does have a transitional plan, and it's all laid out in there. It's over 100 pages, and he's got a large team that can work on this. He is not saying, I want to go back to a monarchy. He wants what the people of Iran want. He wants a free and democratic, government, yes. And he wants the people of Iran to choose. And I think that he is the one that he is the qualified leader. I mean, I can't express this enough that for 2 months, this is what the people of Iran protesting and fighting for were saying. It's on the walls of Tehran, all throughout Iran, not even Tehran, small cities that have limited access to internet and communication. They even listed it. I mean, I just can't express that we can't. Why are we even arguing? He is the transition.
Show us the evidence.
He will be the one to help Iran.
That there's a groundswell of support for him in the country, such that he can take on a state with 92 million people in it. Show us the evidence. Don't just ask us to do it on trust.
You're talking about people that support the regime as well. And let me just let you know, the people that support the regime inside of Iran, majority of them, and we have facts that they are paid to come out and to protest. This is a fact that we know of. So if you're going to say,
and again, the Israelis go ahead, I'm sorry. Too. It doesn't matter.
All right. I'm going to move us on because we need to cover off a few other topics or else we're going to run out of time. So I'm just going to put a pin in that and we're going to move on to looking at oil infrastructure because on the weekend, Israel targeted 30 Iranian fuel depots and those strikes attracted criticism from an unlikely ally, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, he posted this on his social media. I'm going to bring the post up on screen so that everyone can see it. He wrote, "Please be cautious about what targets you select. Our goal is to liberate the Iranian people in a fashion that does not cripple their chance to start a new and better life. The oil economy of Iran will be essential to that endeavour." Joey, does Senator Graham have a point? Is targeting oil infrastructure counterproductive to the US and Israeli war goals?
It's kind of funny. You actually put me in between a rock and a hard place. I have to agree with Lindsey Graham for once, which is not something I'm very comfortable doing. But normally I disagree with him vehemently on a lot of things. But in this case, I think he's 100% correct. I think that the Israelis are wrong for attacking oil infrastructure in Iran. I think that we ought to preserve as much civilian infrastructure and energy so that they do have a chance, so that there is they can rebound from what was already a failing economy more rapidly. And I think the fastest and safest way to do that is through the energy markets. And I think oil and gas and some of the derivatives of those products coming out of Iran as quickly as possible once this is all over is a key component to one, stabilizing global energy markets, but also building confidence with investors worldwide that this isn't going to be business as usual, and that we are not trying to have a repeat of say Iraq or Afghanistan, where there's no thought of what's happening next. And the fact that Lindsey Graham is the one that's going out and cheerleading for this says a lot about, I think, the direction that a lot of U.S. politicians are moving in, which is to say, like, hey, we don't want to do that again, so don't attack civilian infrastructure, don't attack oil and gas pipelines, because ultimately the Iranian people are going to need, and a lot of them are employed in this industry, they're going to need jobs. They're going to need ways to stabilize their family and be able to provide for their families after this is all over. And I think it's a critical and key component for the future success of Iran, regardless of who the leader is. That's the major industry in the country. So you're going to need to have these things. So despite the fact that my better judgment says typically don't agree with Lindsey Graham, but in this case, I think he's 100% correct to criticize Israel in this case.
Arzu, I know that you support intervention in Iran. What about these comments from Senator Graham? Do you think he has a point that they shouldn't be targeting infrastructure, or can you see Israel's plan here of economically crippling the country?
I mean, we're torn about it as Iranians. We discussed this. So here's the thing. The oil is the lifeline to the regime. So that's the way that their revenue comes in. So that's their revenue maker. That's for the military. That's, for it, we're seeing it both ways. It weakens the regime. So hitting these, I do agree. It's half and half for me if I were to say it. And as Iranians discuss this, that we think it's that, targeting all of the oil refineries, probably not the best idea, but this is maximum pressure. And so what it does is it weakens the regime and it weakens their money. So in order to get rid of this regime, they have to weaken point by point of this regime. So in some points, I agree with Senator Graham. And then in some points, I do see what Israel is doing.
Kieran, what do you make of that?
Well, Lindsey Graham obviously doesn't know his attack partners very well. This is what the Israelis do. They target desalination centers. They target civilian infrastructure. They've been speed running it for 80 years on the Palestinians, and especially precipitated in the past 2.5 years since October 7th, of course, in Gaza. This is what they do. So if he's shocked, but I'm pleasantly surprised at his innocence and jejuneness, but I welcome it. I think that bombing, and you can't be 50-50, by the way. Either you're in favor of bombing the oil or you're not. You can't have, you could be morally split.
We're in favor of some.
You could be morally conflicted, but in the end, you have to pick a side on that one, because you can't just bomb half of the civilian infrastructure or the oil infrastructure.
No, because it weakens the regime.
It makes no sense. You either take it all out as a strategy or you leave it in. And we haven't even actually really talked about why this is all happening. Why? What was the clear and present danger of Iran right now? What was the threat of Iran? It was absolutely nowhere near weapons-grade nuclear threshold, enrichment of uranium threshold. It didn't even really have a civilian program again since the June bombing last year, the so-called 12-day war. The president of the United States, who we're now supposed to believe is galloping into Iraq now with all manner of good motives behind him and truth on his side, and we're supposed to believe everything he says and let him have a hand in the next leader, he was saying in June last year that they bombed the capabilities back into the Stone Age. And therefore, we didn't have to worry about nuclear Iran for another 100 years, and that the regime was lying when it said that it still had some capabilities intact. So why the hell are we even doing this now? Why are we setting fire to one of the most important, the most important energy region in the entire world, with very palpable, discernible, tangible effects on global market commodity prices already, with very serious longer-term macroeconomic consequences in the form of inflation, which isn't just some abstract...
All right. I'm going to get a quick response from Arzu, and then I'm going to move us on because we're going to start running out of time. Arzu, why are we even here?
It makes household consumer bills spike. And that is not something that's going to be popular. This war's already unbelievable.
Okay, all right, thanks, Kieran. We'll get a quick response from Arzu.
Yeah, we did see when they pulled out of the JCPOA that Iran started enriching uranium. Let's just be real about some of the things that happened.
Kieran, just let Arzu finish so that we can move on.
The fact is, thank you. Yeah, the fact is that hitting some of the oil targets now, hitting water reserves, things like that, definitely Iranians are not for. But again, the revenue of the regime, the IRGC, it is the oil. That is where they feed into their proxies. So for us, I would say not hitting all. And I think Senator Graham, I think that he was cautious the way that he worded it. And I reread it a few times and I saw the comments underneath his post on X. Iranians said thank you because they know, this is just, it's a sensitive moment. But maximum pressure, we've tried maximum pressure. It is now to weaken the regime at this point. And that's why I think that having it, being able to be as an Iranian to say 50-50, yes, knocking out half of it to tighten their grip on the finances, that is what we want for regime change. Every time they strike, it is weakening the regime's finances, and that helps weaken the regime's infrastructure.
Well, why stop at oil then? Why not bomb? Why not kill all the people that you suspect support the government? And why not kill all the people?
Well, I think that they are doing that. I think that they're trying.
Okay, all right. I'm just going to move us back on. I'm going to move us back onto oil. I'm going to move us back onto.
Khamenei's dead. I'm just going to say it. Khamenei's dead. So I think that they are trying to do that. It's get Khamenei. Now it's get the other Khamenei.
Why stop at oil? My point is, if you want to destroy anything that props up the regime, this is a serious question. Why, if you want to destroy anything that props up the regime, why stop at oil? Because there are loads of economic inputs.
Okay, all right.
Oil is the number
Joey,
one, but I just want to say the IRGC is in schools. They took their camp. They understand that they're threatened. They are in elementary schools where children are. They based their camp. They went out of their military zones and they brought their camps inside of schools. This is what the regime
very
does.
familiar.
I've
heard this from the Israelis.
All right, I'm going to turn us back on to civilian infrastructure just to get us back onto this topic so that we can move on. Joey, I want to ask you, President Trump, is he correct in his assertion when he said that short-term pain on oil markets is worth long-term peace? Is that going to fly in the US?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, I think there will. I think for the first time in a long time, at least a generation or two, we have a political leader that's not making a decision based on day-to-day opinion polls or whether he thinks that something's going to be popular on the internet or something or not, right? And so I think that we finally have a leader that will say, okay, no, we're going to get the job done. We're going to go in and we're going to finish this. And if there's short-term pain, then we'll do that. And the same thing happened with tariffs and a lot of the other things. And a lot of naysayers said that it was going to cause this and it was going to do that. And then ultimately it didn't. And I
when
think
we see the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, though, Joey, is there a concern it's not going to be short term?
I think that it will reopen. I mean, they're moving a third carrier strike group into the region to ensure that it remains open. I think the other part of that was just the insurers in London decided they weren't going to insure any traffic moving through the strait, which I think had a big thing. And the DFC corporate, like the United States government is going to start backing some of those ships and insuring those ships to ensure that ships can flow through the strait again. So I think the short-term pain will be worth the long-term gain of a stable Iran. But moreover, I think you just have to look at a slightly bigger picture for him. Is that domestically, the United States is a net exporter of oil and gas. So if you want to look at the political ramifications for him in a midterm year, it's not going to impact him nearly as much as everyone seems to think it does, because it will have very minimal impact at home. I think the markets that you're looking at are going to be countries who've given up their energy independence, like the UK, like Japan, China, who got most of their oil from Venezuela and from Iran. And I think those are the countries going to be the hardest hit. And I think the president's going to sleep fairly soundly at night. If
And
that's
Joey,
the case.
I'm not an
words,
expert
screw the
in
rest of the
oil,
world.
but
We'll bomb
the
fuck
United
out of the
States as an
region.
American, we have nothing to worry about. We have one of the largest oil reserves. And Joey, maybe you could touch on that about the SPR. Like, I think Americans need to be reassured that we have a large oil reserve inside of the United States.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's a safe assumption. I mean, aside from the fact that Joe Biden drained a lot of our SPR, and the Democrats refused to pay to refill it, that's definitely not helping situation. But at the end of the day, the United States is a net exporter of energy, whether it's oil and gas. And now we're moving to do a lot of nuclear energy as well. So I think from an energy perspective, I think the United States will be fine, which allows President Trump the flexibility to endure some of that short-term pain for him as a world leader.
Iran has shown no let-up, though, in its ability to mount drone and missile reprisals at Gulf states, for example, including targeting energy infrastructure across the region. Arezo, have the US and Israel been less successful in crippling Iran's military than they would have us believe?
No, I think we haven't even hit. What I'm waiting for is they've been focusing more on Tehran. I'm actually waiting to see when they're going to go into other cities inside of Iran that have a large military capabilities, uranium enrichment. There are nuclear sites in multiple cities that we as Iranians know of. I think we're at the tip. We're weakening the regime. So I think the US and Israel have, they've touched the iceberg, but they're now drilling into the iceberg, if I were to analyze it in that sense. We are at the surface of it, and we're not even near what the capabilities that this regime has. And I do think that this actually shows with the missiles that we see footage of inside of Iran. Iran launches missiles that are failing and they're landing inside of Iran, and they're targeting strikes that absolutely have nothing. I mean, U.S. embassies make sense. U.S. military area makes sense, but hotels and things that they're doing, I mean, it's chaos. And I think that the regime is aware.
But
and
the fact, though, Arezo, that they can still reap that kind of chaos as you describe it, and the US and Israel have not been able to rein them in 1 week into this conflict. I mean, have they underestimated things here?
Like 90%.
Joey, go ahead.
I think there's fewer launches happening every single day, and I think in the next few days it'll be nearly zero as far as what they're doing. So they're not launching at the same rate they were on day 1 and day 2 and day 3.
But they haven't certainly stopped. I can tell you that for.
They haven't stopped, no. Well, I mean, I know there's probably people that live in the region that could attest to that they definitely haven't stopped, but it's not at the same level. I know that but it does take time. We have to find the launchers. They're very good at hiding this. They've been planning it for 47 years, as everyone likes to point out. And they have a lot of material. They have a lot of people. And despite the fact that we took out a lot of their military infrastructure, they allowed the remaining military to operate almost independently. And so they gave them kind of standing orders and allowed them to fire indiscriminately at whatever the local commander decided that they wanted to do. So as those ones still exist, you're going to continue to see suicide drones, and you're going to continue to see onesie, twosie missiles that are being launched, mostly drones more than missiles. And the United States and Israel and obviously other allies in the region are starting to hit these launchers and hit some of these areas where these drones or things are coming from. So I think you've seen a degraded capability from day 1 to say day 10. And I think over the next few days, you'll continue to see that drop off to where eventually it will probably stop, where maybe we get 1 to 0 a day, just because it's a war of attrition. And I think that the United States and the allies in the region are prepped to win that particular battle.
Yeah, they're a large military. I mean, we can't expect it overnight or within 1 week to weaken a military force and a regime that's been there for 47 years that's deeply rooted. It will take some time, but I agree with Joey. It's going to take, we're going to see it less and less and less.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kieran?
I'm gonna. It's pretty difficult to talk to you both because I feel like you inhabit the Bermuda Triangle or a parallel universe or something. Iran has totally stunned both Israel and the US. And I know this from people who were insiders and have now been exiled, that they are genuinely stunned by the degree to which Iran has been happy to basically sit back and take a pounding, because nobody doubts the military superiority of the United States and Israel versus Iran. But the degree to which Iran has played a longer game and raised the costs for the United States. I think the one true thing, or the one thing that I recognize from planet Earth that iReview has said, is that the US could bear the spike in energy costs because of its energy autarky or independence or whatever. But that's obviously a different issue. You're right, it can do that. It's going to screw it for the rest of us, but you can do that, fine. That's the one thing I recognize from the real world that you've said. Everything else, I mean, Iran, as I say, sat back, played a longer game, raised the costs, has hit bases across the region. What's going to happen to those allies across the Middle East once this is all over? You both seem to think that there's going to be this wonderful, rosy Iranian regime that's going to spring from the depths. And I have asked you to provide me with any evidence for that. And instead, all you can say is Venezuela, not Iraq. It's pitiful. Humiliating for both of you. The reality is that this is an extremely dangerous game, brought on by a war criminal and somebody trying to kick up dust to cover up the fact that they were friends with a peace.
So you suggest keeping the Iranian regime in power?
Again, I keep asking, are you talking about
the Iranian regime?
That's the reality. Talking about that was
I need to clarify that.
Lord Mendelsohn? I don't know.
At a time when Iran's nuclear capabilities were virtually non-existent. It is completely and utterly unnecessary. It is very, very costly to the entire region, and it will be costly.
Okay, all right, Kieran, pause and let the other panellists respond to what you've said there. Joey, I know you want to jump in. Go ahead.
So during the negotiations that they were having with Iran, the United States offered to provide them with enough uranium fuel to power a civilian nuclear program, and they refused. Because it wasn't about nuclear, it wasn't about energy, it wasn't about anything else. They wanted to enrich uranium, they wanted to create nuclear weapons, and we know that. And then they admitted in those negotiations, they told us exactly how much enriched uranium they still had after our attacks. Fine, that would be great, good for them.
Yeah.
And as far as they're sitting back and relaxing, I don't think that the Ayatollah is sitting back and relaxing anywhere right now because he's dead. And I think if they're going to keep taking hit after hit, we're going to keep
ring shot
dumping muscles into everybody else. Then no, they're not. I sit back and enjoy all they want to. The fact that they're on their fourth,
I didn't say they were enjoying it
now because
I said they were
happy
to sit back and take.
Okay, all right, Kieran, just wait. Arzu, I want a response from you as well.
I'm having difficult when you're saying what planet are we on and things like that. My question to you is, do you support the Islamic Republic of Iran to stay in power? I mean, I need to know that. I'd like to know who I'm debating, because if you're going to be pro-regime, then they are a threat to the entire world. I mean, you're defending a regime.
Did you ask that question in good faith? Because if you did, you should allow me the space to answer.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think that's almost such an irrelevance right now that I almost don't.
You're defending them.
But I will tell you, no. It's such an irrelevance because your coalition of the willing is comprised of people who commit war crimes. And so if the question is the way that they treat people, then I think you have a major problem right from the very off. But I'll entertain your question further than that if you would like. I think that in a perfect world, or even in 5 to 10 years, I would like to see a different, more secular regime in Iran. But what I want right now is completely and utterly irrelevant. What I want right now is for this completely unnecessary, very costly, illegal and unjust war to cease, because it is setting fire to the entire region. Israel and the United States are, not for the first time, behaving like
Israel has a right to defend itself, by the way.
Extremely fractious region of the world with massive consequences that will reverberate over the years for everybody. Now, I know you both deny that and say, we're sitting here on our island in the United States and we've got energy. We clutch, as Teddy Roosevelt says, we clutch an ocean in each hand. And I don't doubt that you think that that's true. But actually, this is going to have very, very serious consequences for that entire region of the world and across many of your allies in Europe. And you will not get what you want.
You mentioned 5 to 10 years.
You will not get what you want.
You mentioned 5 to 10 years. We're talking now.
Strengthen the regime, or it's going to create a failed state. And do you know what? I ask Arabiya to do this. Get us back in 6 months. Get the 3 of us back in 6 months or to a year. If I'm wrong, I will honestly be delighted, because I do not want people to die. I do not want the country to descend into a Pandora's box. I genuinely don't. But I guarantee you,
the Iranian people wouldn't let that happen.
I guarantee if you get us back in 6 months to a year, unfortunately, I will have been right in what I've said.
Okay, all right, we're almost out of time. We're almost out of time, so I just want one quick response to all of you before we wrap up. Joey, the new Supreme Leader, will he be able to galvanise power behind him, or is the Iranian society pretty permanently divided at the moment and it is in the risk of creating a power vacuum?
So I think the new Supreme Leader isn't a course correction. I think he's continued proof that the regime is the problem, remains the problem. And I think that as the United States will continue to keep pressure and deter them, and there should be zero illusions about that. While I think he will probably solidify a lot of the hardliners behind him at the moment, I don't think that that's a long-term sustainable position for him. And I don't think he's probably very long for his position.
Okay. Kieran, very, very briefly for us, will he be able to galvanise power and support behind him, or will we see a power vacuum develop?
I think he's almost irrelevant as an agent, as an individual. I think it's the continuity, symbolic continuity. And I also think that I think Joey could very well be right. I think he might not be long for this world, but I kind of think that's the point in a way. You know, there is a lot of these guys at the upper echelons of the Shia structure are happy to take martyrdom at this point. And so I think that my concern is that either the regime is strengthened over a long period of time because of this, or we descend, actually worse in the short term, we descend into a failed state and Iraqification of Iran.
And Arzu, round us out. Is this intervention going to galvanise people in Iran against the West and get them unified around the new Supreme Leader, or is the community just too divided?
Yeah, no, he's as Kieran, I agree with you. He's irrelevant. I have to agree with you on that. He's irrelevant. This is just to legitimize the regime, to quickly show the people inside of Iran that they're still in power, and that, you know, it's a fear tactic. We've seen it with the regime with multiple things in the past. I think that this is inside of Iran right now. They're staying indoors, and I'll be very frank about this. They're staying indoors, and they're waiting for internet to be able to reach all of us. And that's what, you know, they're waiting to see, you know, how weak the regime gets. And I do believe that they will come out into the streets.
It will be interesting to see how it unfolds. Very precarious times indeed. I wish we had more time to get into this with all of you, but we have to leave it there. Thank you all so much for your analysis. Arezo Rashidian, healthcare professional and long-time political activist for a free and secular Iran. Kieran Andrieu, political commentator and doctor of political economy. And Joey Meugniot, strategic political advisor. I appreciate your diverse opinions, as always, here on Counterpoints. And to our audience at home, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Be sure to keep up to date with our latest debates and interviews by subscribing to Al Arabiya English on YouTube, and of course follow us across X and TikTok. We'll see you next time.